How lies made him rich? Meet Francis. He's a professional liar, but his lies? Oh, they're about to make him rich. And not like just bought a new toaster rich, like Hollywood blockbuster with Leonardo DiCaprio playing you rich. Francis is 16, living in New York, and causing more trouble than a raccoon in a trash can. He's lying, stealing from his parents, and even swiping cash from local businesses. But his pièce de resistance? Forgery. Fancy, right? He gets arrested. After he's bailed out, thanks mom and dad, does he learn his lesson? Of course not. He goes on another crime spree. This time, he steals a car and drives straight to sunny California. Probably thinking, new state, new me. Spoiler alert, that didn't work. He's caught and sent back to New York. He has more outstanding warrants than your favorite celebrity. Back in the Big Apple, he has a brilliant idea. He forges some checks and buys an airline pilot's uniform. Because, obviously, when you look like a pilot, people trust you, right? Wrong. His checks bounce higher than a basketball. And, surprise, he gets arrested again. He spends the next 2 years thinking about his life in prison, probably in a pilot costume. By the time he's 19, guess what? Yep, arrested again in Boston for stealing a car and writing more bad checks. He's racking up arrests like they're Pokemon cards. Another year in the slammer. At 20, Francis is back, baby. He dusts off that trusty pilot uniform and scams some free flights. He pretends to be an off-duty pilot. Oh, Francis. He's caught again in Baton Rouge after, wait for it, stealing checks from a family who was actually trying to help him. Way to return the favor, buddy. From there, he flees to Europe, because why not? He's in France, Sweden, stealing cars, cashing fake checks, the usual. But in France, the law finally catches up to him. Even French police know what's up. He's deported back to the US. Now he's 22 and probably jet-lagged. Back in the US, does he change his ways? Poot! Nope. He's back in that pilot costume, cashing more forged checks. A few months later, he's arrested again. But this time, he escapes jail. Classic Francis. Only to be caught days later while trying to cash yet another bad check. You've got to admire the dedication at this point. He's sentenced to 12 years because, well, the courts finally got tired of his nonsense. After a few years, he's out on parole. Fresh start, right? Wrong. He gets arrested again, this time for stealing art supplies and cameras from a kid's summer camp. I mean, who does that? At 26, he's living in his parole officer's garage, under close watch. Surely now he's going to turn things around, right? Maybe. But then, at 27, Francis gets his wildest idea yet. He starts his own anti-fraud consulting business. Yeah, that's right. Francis, professional liar, is now teaching people how to avoid fraud. And what's even better, instead of talking about the boring stuff he actually did, like stealing checks and scamming families, Francis starts making up even crazier lies. He tells everyone he was a pediatrician at 16, a doctor at 16. He claims he pretended to be a lawyer for a year. Oh, and don't forget about the time he taught sociology at BYU. Sure, why not, Francis? And the cherry on top? He says he stole millions from airlines, with the FBI chasing him down in epic action movie-worthy pursuits. The truth? None of this ever happened. Not a word of it. He's just spinning these wild tales like he's auditioning for a soap opera. But guess what? People love his stories. They can't get enough. Soon, Francis is on game shows, then he's on The Today Show, and before you know it, he's chatting with Johnny Carson. He repeats the same made-up lies again and again, and the audience is just eating it up. These TV appearances make him famous. He teams up with a writer and publishes an autobiography, not about his real life, because who would read that? But about these insane, made-up adventures. The book is called Catch Me If You Can, and it becomes a New York Times bestseller. But it doesn't stop there. He sells the movie rights. Years later, DreamWorks turns it into a movie directed by none other than Steven Spielberg, with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks playing the leads. It's a huge hit. They even turn it into a Broadway musical. All this time, Francis is still out there, telling the same fake stories to packed audiences. The internet eventually calls him out. Journalists dig up the truth, and surprise, Francis isn't some criminal mastermind. He's just a really, really good liar. But here's the kicker. Despite everyone finding out the truth, Francis is still running his anti-fraud company, still giving speeches, and still making bank off the very lies that made him rich in the first place. Shout out to Hollywood for making lies profitable.